Welcome back to Afternoon Live. If you and your partner fight about sex or aren't connecting as often as you'd like, this segment is for you. Yes, here to talk about what a no-sex marriage really is and what you can do to turn things around. We welcome back couples and sex therapist Megan Meganson is with me. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me back.
Yes, as we said, this could be a 2-hour segment right here.
Absolutely.
Because everyone's relationship is so different.
Right.
But as far as a no-sex marriage, what is that? What constitutes really what that means?
You know, I'm so glad that we're talking about this right now at the beginning of the year. This is one of the questions I get most frequently in my practice. People are really concerned about whether or not they're having enough sex and what it means for their relationship if they're not having enough sex.
Right.
So I want to dispel some myths today, give some information. We do have a pretty big body of research from the counseling side of things, looking at how often are couples having sex, what constitutes a lot of sex or a little bit of sex. And what the research tells us is that couples who have sex less than 10 times a year fall into the no sex or the non-sexual marriage category.
Okay.
So less than 10 times a year.
Less than 10 times a year. So once a month.
About once a month with 2 months off, if you want to think about it that way. We also know that 1 in 5 couples fall into this category of having a non-sexual marriage. So it's a pretty high number of couples, right? 1 in 5.
Yeah.
But what's important to me about this statistic is that it's just a statistic, right? This categorization really is designed for research to help us gather data and analyze points. The more important question is, are you distressed by the amount of sex you are or aren't having in your relationship?
Or is it that number that's making you distressed?
Or is it the number that's making you distressed? Right, right. So if you came into my office and said, oh my gosh, we're only having sex 8 times a year. I heard you on Afternoon Live, you know, this must be a disaster. I would tell you to take a deep breath and first think about how satisfied you are with your sexual relationship. And if you tell me that you're not distressed by only having sex 8 times a year, then you're doing great, right? If you and your partner are connecting emotionally, if you feel like you really do have an intimate connection with each other, you just don't have sex as much as the average couple when we're looking at the statistics, then you have a beautiful relationship that is perfect just the way it is.
And I'm sure couples can have that conversation and really know that the other person's on the same, that they're not straying or they're not doing something to make up for the fact that they're not getting it. You know? But for those couples that it's the elephant in the room, that it's like, oh, I don't know what's going on here, but I'm kind of fine with it, or, you know, what do you say to those couples?
Yeah, so if it's the opposite conversation and I ask the question, are you distressed by the amount of times per year you're having sex in your relationship, and the answer is yes, I am distressed, then we do have a problem. We know that the most common presenting problem in couples in sex therapy offices are differences in sexual desire, differences in sexual frequency in the relationship. 1 in 3 couples at some point in their relationship struggle with this issue. So it's pervasive. Lots of couples are fighting about how much sex they have, are arguing about it, and a lot of couples are avoiding it entirely. And we know that if any of these things are happening in your relationship, it's really deteriorating the overall quality of your relationship. So this is a really big problem. It's either not a problem at all or a really big problem. There are very few couples that kind of exist in this middle space of neutral about sex. It's either good or it's really not good.
So what do you do when it's really not good?
So when it's really not good, you got to kind of zoom out and take a look at the whole picture. Issues, differences in desire discrepancy, frequency of sex in the relationship are incredibly complicated because they're impacted by a million different variables. So I'm not going to pretend to have a couple of quick fixes today that are going to help you get back on track, but I do have a couple of suggestions of things that you can invest your time and your resources in that might help you get to a better place in the relationship.
Perfect. I know you have a book that you really suggest.
Yeah, so one book that I love is called Rekindling Desire. And this is a book by a sex therapist by the name of Barry McCarthy. You can find this book on Amazon, and it is written for these couples exactly. It's a step-by-step plan for what you can do to understand this problem in your relationship and steps you can take to begin getting to a place in the relationship where both people feel like their needs are really being met, which is hard to do when your needs are very different. But that is the most important thing to a healthy relationship, is feeling like your needs are respected and met by your partner.
What can you do besides the reading? If it's one of those things that you're really determined to jump in and have that conversation.
If you try the self-help route and you find that you're still fighting about it or you're still not getting what you need, then I really do suggest taking that next step of investing in some couples and sex therapy services to get you on the right track. And this can be a scary option for people. It's a big financial investment. It's so vulnerable to go in and talk to a complete stranger about what's happening in your sex life. But if you're ready to take that step, I would recommend really finding someone who's trained in both couples therapy and sex therapy. And it might be surprising, but those two things don't often align in our field. So do your due diligence in finding a counselor who can really help you from both of those perspectives. I don't think you'll regret it.
How do you broach that conversation with your significant other that you want to
Yeah, absolutely. I would try the self-help route first. Kind of put it on the table. You know, we both know this is a problem in our relationship. This is not going to come as a surprise to either one of us, but see if you can get your partner's commitment to doing something about it, right? Let's start with that self-help option. It's often kind of an easier path to entry when we're working on something really personal and complicated. And if you're not successful in the self-help route, then just say, this is so important to me. I don't want our sexual relationship to be a thing that deteriorates our relationship. Let's get some help together.
When you say it, it sounds so good. That's why I think people should choose the therapist option.
It's a good option. I'm biased, but it's a good option.
And we'll have more information about Megan and these tips on our website at katu.com. All right, coming up next, we're going to take a closer look at Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s final campaigns and why they matter so deeply. Stay right here.